Alright, so what I'm working on today is swatches. I have some designs in mind, so I have a bunch of patterns that I need to design. So the first thing I need to do is the swatches. So the first thing I'm working on, this is very interesting yarn. It's called Sun-Kissed yarn by Lion Brand. And what I want to do with this is actually make just a basic hat. Do knit and purl because I want to use a stockinette stitch, and it's going to be done in the round. This yarn is very fine. I'm going to go with size 3 knitting needles. Size 3 knitting needles. And then I can adjust it accordingly. What I will do is, let me cast on 45 stitches for the Sun-Kissed yarn to see what my gauge is going to be and to knit a swatch. 4x4 is the measurements for your swatch. So I'll do 5 inches by 5 inches. Count 45 stitches. Now the thing is with swatches, this is the part of the knitting that takes a while to do, which means I could do the 45 stitches, I can start it out, it could shrink, it could expand, and I may need to take it all out all over again. So this is a very free form type of stream where it's going to be, oh, I'm starting a swatch. Oh, it's not right. Let's take it out. Let's decrease. Let's increase. Let's figure it out. That's just the way swatches are, and it could take a while. So I'm just going to guesstimate. I am guesstimating on everything I do. So I'm going to guesstimate 45 stitches. I'm using straight knitting needles for my swatches. I may switch to double pointed. It doesn't matter what you use. You can use your double pointed, you can use your straight knitting needles. I'll see how it goes with the camera and if I can do it correctly. Four. 42, 43, 44. 45. And I just did a long tail cast on. You can go to my YouTube and I have a short video on how to do a long tail cast on. Okay, so we are starting out with 45 stitches. However, that may not necessarily follow through the whole thing, because swatches are very up and down until you figure out exactly the measurements it's supposed to be, which means your stitches could change. So I'm going to knit and purl because I'm doing a stockinette. I might have to switch to to in the round knitting needles. These are kind of long and they are going to clank. Knit one row and then purl the next row. I wonder if I do have size 3. Odd. I might end up switching. I think it's going to be too hard to show, to demonstrate with long knitting needles. It's so much easier with circular. Alright, let me just do this row and then I can purl the rest on. I'm going to go to in the round. You have to take it out. You sometimes have to. It's a long process. Yeah, see, that's going to be too big. So we want less than 45, which is fine. So let's take off 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's take off, let's do 40 stitches. And I'll do it in the round because it'll be a lot easier. And these are too long. I may have to adjust accordingly and go up, because it does recommend size 7 knitting needles, but this yarn is super fine. All right, and then if the size 3 becomes a little bit too tight for the stitches, I'll move up to size 5, 4, whatever I feel is appropriate. And 40. All right, so we'll try this. See if this will work. So it's going to be many, many attempts at trial and error. All right, so let's try this again. Let's knit. These are like super tiny. That's the knit. That might work. I'll continue knitting. And this is new yarn ever used. So it's all trial and error with this actual yarn. As opposed to other yarns that I've used, I can pretty much accurately figure out what I need to use for knitting needles. But I've never used this yarn before. So I'm trying to get a feel of what is going to be the right feel and look of the stitches. And then I can get an idea of how I can change it if the stitches don't look how I want it. And since stockinette curls, you will have to block it to figure out your swatches. It's really good to block your swatches. I'll continue knitting, and it may be to the point where it might be a little too small, but I need a feel of how the stitches are going to look in this yarn, which means I need to knit a little more before I can decipher. I might go up a size 4. Or a 5, which means I would need less stitches to cast on for my swatch. So I'm just trying to get a feel of this Summer Kiss yarn. Now I'm trying to spread out the stitches. Perfect. And that's putting on 40 stitches, so that is perfect. However, maybe perfect in length. I'm thinking it's going to be a little too tight. Yeah, I'm going up. Let's do a size 5 because it's kind of the perfect. Let's see what the size 4 look like. This is where I'm trying to determine the way you're looking at the stitch right now. To me, it's a little bit too tight. Now, when you're looking at the various sizes of the knitting needles. I'm gonna probably go with the 4 cast on 35 stitches. 40 stitches is perfect for the size 3 with the Sunkiss yarn, because as you see, the size 5 is starting to get bigger. If we're looking at the size 3 and how nicely the tension is looking on that one, if we do a size 5, it'll create more holes, and I like to have an assistant looking like an actual stockinette than to look more lacy. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and cast on 35 stitches. We're going to go with the size 4 knitting needle. Cast on 30 stitches with that, because there might be a 5 stitch difference as you go up your knitting needles. You're now extending it with a little more of a texture that's going to be bigger. When you drop down the knitting needles, it's smaller, so you're going to add more. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do 35 long tail cast on.